Well, many people associate the word biodiversity with the sort of scenes you get in a David Attenborough TV program, preserving areas in national parks and protecting photogenic species that live there. And that's right, of course, but that's only the tip of the iceberg. Biodiversity encompasses nature and its complicated ecosystems that have evolved over the millennia or even millions of years, which we manage and use or exploit in so many ways. So when we talk about biodiversity, we should be thinking about the whole of natural ecosystems, which range from the myriad of microscopic species in the soil through plants, fungi, invertebrates, all the way to the larger mammals. Of course, humans are part of this, and we are now the dominant species. We have a lot of historical baggage, however, in our attitude to nature from the early days of the Industrial Revolution, when nature was seen as something wild and to be tamed and exploited. And that is still found in the basis of our economic thinking today. But now we understand nature's role. It is clear that humanity's future is dependent on protecting natural processes. To develop a sustainable future, we need to coexist with other species and continue to benefit from the key functions of the natural ecosystems, which range from removing carbon from the atmosphere through moderating flooding and local climate to services such as pollination and ultimately providing our food and fibre. There are many measures that indicate we've gone too far in exploiting nature already. The area of the planet which is ecologically intact, that is in basically the same state as it would be before our explosive growth in numbers and affluence, is only a few percent, maybe 3%. Extinction of species which have been in a stable natural environment for millions of years are now running at such a rate, we're talking about the 6th mass extinction during the Earth's 4.5 billion year history. There are many reasons, both moral and self-interested, for reversing this. The more we understand, the more interlinked and dependent we are on diversity. Agriculture needs diversity to build resilience against the increasing stresses of climate change, pests and diseases, and essential services like pollination depend on a wide diversity to pollinate the many different plant species, including coffee, cocoa, and most fruits and vegetables. This underlines the importance of the next meeting of the Convention on Biological Diversity, which has long sought to stop and reverse deforestation, restore natural ecosystems, and reverse biodiversity loss. While both climate change and biodiversity have their own international convention, but these are operated separately and often involve completely different parts of the governments that participate. Yet naturally, they are intertwined. Nature and ecosystems store an awful lot of carbon, and their conversion, often to agriculture but also to infrastructure like roads or cities, not only destroys the natural ability to capture more carbon from the atmosphere, but releases the huge quantities that the ecosystem has stored. So loss of biodiversity is a source of global warming. At the same time, warming accelerates biodiversity loss through putting additional stress on environments. Then the actions decided in one convention can have positive or negative effects in the other. One example is the use of carbon offsets that have grown explosively under the Climate Convention's attempts to reward schemes that take carbon out of the atmosphere. The schemes offered by companies often involve planting trees to absorb carbon dioxide as they grow. However, when trees are planted in a natural environment, they will inevitably destroy its biodiversity in the process, and may even be counterproductive from a climate perspective. For instance, grasslands have high levels of below-ground carbon that may be disturbed and released by tree planting schemes, and that especially applies if the area is a peat bog. Carbon offsetting may not take that into account, so the net result may be more carbon in the atmosphere, not less, and a loss of biodiversity, in other words, a double failure. In the reverse direction, a lot of emphasis is now given to nature-based solutions for climate change involving a lot of reforestation. Depending on how this is achieved, it can be highly beneficial or highly damaging to biodiversity. Replanting as a monoculture will not be beneficial and also render the recovered forests vulnerable to pests, diseases, and fire. In contrast, carefully reforesting with a multi-species mix of local species based on our understanding of the natural ecosystem will be beneficial to biodiversity as well as more resilient. These are just some examples of where the two issues need to be considered together, and that's why we wrote our report. Yes, it is, generally speaking, because the issue is widely recognised. However, the agendas and processes of the two conventions are very well entrenched separately and not easy to change. An important step was to have a joint workshop in December 2020 between experts from the science advisory groups of both conventions. That's IPCC for the Climate Convention and IPBES for the Biodiversity Convention. And that did lay out in greater detail the sort of issues I just touched on. While it is now recognised as an issue, however, it is still not agreed what to do about it. At the last meeting of the Climate Change Convention, that was COP26 in Glasgow, it did get a mention and will no doubt be on the agenda at the next Convention of Biological Diversity meeting. However, having a joint decision-making mechanism has been opposed by some countries whose economies are still much based on deforestation or exploitation of natural resources in their own country. But it is important to tackle this issue to avoid humanity shooting itself in both the climate and biodiversity feet at the same time.